Can a single phrase from Charles Leclerc collapse the optimism of all Ferrari just before the Belgian GP? What seemed like a simple day of filming in Mugello ended up shaking the foundations of the most legendary team of Formula One. What exactly did Leclerc say, and why did he freeze Hamilton and all Maranello? Mugello. A narrow, technical, demanding circuit. It is not the scenario where a Formula One team carries a car to hide its defects. On the contrary, it is the ideal place to submit it to a character test. Ferrari chose it with a clear purpose: to check if the technical review implemented in the SF25 could be the turning point they needed to resurrect their options in the 2025 season. But what began as a day of measured optimism was transformed, in just a phrase, into an internal alert that still resonates within Maranello. Charles Leclerc, with a firm look in the helmet still soaked by the tension of the test, released the unthinkable, "I have not felt a big difference." In a normal context, that comment could have gone unnoticed. But here, after weeks of factory work, with a new rear suspension geometry, adjustments in aerodynamic balance and a tense technical environment for the initial results of the season, his words were a bomb. Internally, the team had deposited great hopes in that test. The new rear suspension modified the anchor point to increase the anti-quad, which would theoretically allow greater stability of the car by accelerating, reducing the pimp and allowing the mechanical grip to better exploit. Ferrari had detected that one of his weak points in the first races was the inconsistency in traction at the exit of curve, especially in low-speed curves such as those of Australia or certain sectors in China. The engineers analyzed each telemetry line, every millimeter of wear in the car plank, each flat bottom oscillation. Everything pointed to a real improvement, even if the used tires were not of career specification. However, for a pilot like Leclerc, whose sensitivity to the equilibrium of the car and the instant reactions of the rear train is almost surgical, the absence of sensation was devastating. The effect of his words was immediate. The enthusiasm froze. The team, which had already begun to delineate the strategies for Spa with the new package in mind, was forced to reassess. Was it really a failure in the new piece? A partial evaluation by Leclerc? Or simply a temporary disconnection between car and pilot? Lewis Hamilton, more reserved but no less acute, chose to focus on technical analysis. Its long batches were overwhelming. It detected a speed increase in rapid curves up to 6 to 7 kilometers per hour without penalizing the wear of the flat bottom. From his perspective, the car was alive when the fuel load was reduced, something he knows deeply after years dealing with the dynamic balance of the Mercedes. But even he, by communicating his impressions, made it clear that this is a process, not an immediate solution. He reiterated his long-term vision: "Judge us at the end of my stage in Ferrari." That phrase, more than a defense, is a warning. The SF25 is evolving. But he does it in the midst of an environment of expectations, media pressure and silent tensions. And Mugello that day became more than a test circuit. He became the place where Ferrari discovered that the real challenge is not only to make a faster car, but to make his two pilots feel it as his at the same time. The most relevant modification of the package was the alteration of the geometry of the upper rear triangle. Specifically, Ferrari lowered about 30 millimeters the front anchor point of the upper arm in the change housing. At first glance, this might seem insignificant, but in an F1 car, 30 millimeters can completely change the way in which the rear suspension responds to vertical loads. This change increases the effect of anti-quad, a mechanical property that resists the compression of the rear train under acceleration. In theory, this allows to maintain a flatter platform, facilitating a better coupling of the diffuser and the air flow under the car. This rear modification does not act alone. It adds to a change that Ferrari had already implemented at the beginning of the season: the use of a pull rod-type front suspension. This architecture, in which the suspension arms pull the components up, instead of pushing from below as in push rod, allows to reduce the center of gravity and improve the aerodynamic flow to the barge boards and the flat background. In addition, the anti-dive also increases, a property that reduces the head of the car when braking. Both systems, anti-dive in front and anti-quad behind, are designed to work in harmony. The ultimate goal is none other than creating a more stable aerodynamic platform, which can operate at lower filming heights without compromising the technical regulations, particularly the plank's wear. This is critical, especially after the painful episode of China, where the excessive wear of the background resulted in the disqualification of several cars, including one of the Ferrari. At the concept level, what Ferrari is trying is to approach the philosophy of cars such as the Red Bull RB18 or the McLaren MCL38, which already dominated this platform's stability from previous seasons. But here is the challenge. Introducing these changes in the middle of the season implies that pilots must readjust their driving style. And not everyone does it at the same pace. Lewis Hamilton, with years of experience adapting to complex cars and with multiple configurations in Mercedes, quickly understood the type of balance that this new suspension was trying to generate. I knew that the key was not to look for immediate results, but to identify how the car responded to different fuel loads and types of curve. His comments to the team reflected this deep understanding. He detected that the SF25 with the new package responded better in high load curves, where the chassis relies more, but without penalizing the bottom of the car. For him, this meant margin to explode. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, was found in a more uncomfortable position. Its driving style is based on an intuitive connection with the rear axle of the car. When that feeling is broken, even for a rationally correct redesign, the result is disconnection. For Leclerc, the lack of felt difference was actually a raw message. He did not perceive the benefit. But that does not mean that I was not there. These types of differences between pilots are not new but dangerous, because the same car can be interpreted in very different ways. Ferrari knows. Loic Serra and his engineering team as well. The question is not only if the car has improved, but if both pilots can explode it at the same level. Because if only one of them manages to do it, Ferrari will not be fighting with two cars in front. And in a season as tight as 2025, that may be the difference between being champion or staying from the wall. The tension after Mugello's test was not limited to the technical level. What was lived in Maranello in later days was a silent storm, invisible to the public but evident for those who know the internal dynamics of a Formula Team 1. The declaration of Leclerc not only froze the enthusiasm, but also sowed a concern that went beyond the sensors and the data. Can Ferrari keep their structure cohesive if its two key pilots perceive the car in such different ways? In the center of everything is the new Leclerc-Hamilton binomial. Two pilots with championship ambitions. Two driving styles that seem to look at the same car with different lenses. Lewis Hamilton has made a deliberate effort to join the team. He has adopted Leclerc's braking style, has adjusted his technical language to that of Italian engineers, and has avoided any sign of discord. His message is clear. He is in Ferrari to build something. But his speech of "judge us at the end of my stage" is not free. It is a shield and at the same time a warning. Hamilton knows that this transformation will not be immediate, and prepares emotionally and professionally for waiting. Leclerc, meanwhile, lives a different reality. He is the #1 pilot by history and for connection with the house. It has been the future commitment since its arrival, the emotional banner of the project. But Hamilton's signing changed the rules of the game. Monegasque is now forced to share prominence and technical direction. In Mugello, when he said that he didn't feel a big difference, he was not simply delivering a fact. He was throwing a message of frustration, perhaps unconscious, but powerful. The car is no longer molded exclusively to his style. And this perception fracture could lead to deeper consequences. If in Spa, headquarters of the next Grand Prix, the new package yields well in the hands of Hamilton but not in those of Leclerc, a complicated narrative will open. That of a team that unintentionally has built a car for one of its pilots. We have already seen that story in Ferrari. In times where technical favoritism was inclined to Schumacher, then by Alonso, then for Vettel. None of those periods ended lasting titles when there was internal division. Frédéric Vasseur's challenge, team director, is not just a technician. It is human. You must keep two giant egos, two pilot philosophies, and a technical direction that begins to show signs of inclination towards a specific approach. Vasseur should prevent the idea that Ferrari has ceased to be a symmetrical equipment. The immediate future, then, does not depend only on track performance. It depends on the team's ability to manage expectations, emotions, and leadership. Spa will be the first real exam in the Mugello technical package. But it will also be a silent test for the unit's unit. Because if Ferrari fails that his two pilots feel equally part of the same project, however fast the SF25 is, they will always run with one less wheel. And in a season where McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull have already shown signals of recovery and constant evolution, that kind of vulnerability is paid with lost titles. Formula One has always been more than speed and strategy. It is a scenario of human tensions, technical decisions that impact careers, titles, and legacies. Charles Leclerc's phrase after the test in Mugello is just a line in appearance, but has opened a crack that, if it is not managed with precision, could become an abyss between two realities within Ferrari, and even more. If you were part of the engineering team in Maranello, would you bet to continue developing the car in the direction that favors Hamilton, looking for pure performance even if that sacrifices the comfort of Leclerc? Or would you prioritize finding an intermediate solution that maintains both competitive pilots, although that slows down the immediate technical progress? What would you do if you were on the Ferrari wall? What message do you think really wanted to give Leclerc? Are we facing a latent crisis or simply the normal start of an adaptation process within an equipment and transformation?